The humiliation was public, cruel, and recorded. He laughed right in her face, but he had no idea he was about to awaken a dormant force. An unthinkable wager, an ancient document, and the promise that an invisible woman's life would change forever. The musty scent of the parchment filled her nostrils, a distinct odor of rusty ink mixed with tanned leather. Eleanor knew that smell. She was 17 when she first encountered it in the State University library. Her father held an 11th century manuscript. His fingers trembled with emotion. "Look, Eleanor, classical Aramaic with Latin influence." She leaned in. The letters danced on the page. Her father pointed to each symbol. "One day you'll teach this. Promise?" "I promise, Dad." That promise had changed everything. She devoured linguistics, Latin, Greek, Aramaic, ancient Hebrew. By 23, she was an assistant professor. By 30, she chaired the ancient languages department. Her office at the university overlooked the garden. Shelves of rare books lined the walls. Students queued up to attend her classes. The dean called her the institution's pride. Eleanor was lecturing on medieval manuscripts when the phone rang. "Professor Miller, it's the hospital. Your father, a stroke." She raced through the corridors. The taxi took an eternity. When she arrived, he was already gone. The funeral cost more than she had. The experimental medications they'd tried in his final days had consumed everything. She sold her apartment, sold her car, sold the rare books he had collected his entire life. It wasn't enough. Hospital bills arrived every week. Collectors called in the dead of night. She requested a loan from the university, denied, asked colleagues. Everyone vanished. 3 months later, the letter arrived. Budget cuts, dismissed. Eleanor left the university carrying a box of her belongings. 20 years of a career packed into cardboard. She tried other colleges. None hired her. She tried private schools. They asked for recent experience. She tried freelance translations. They paid pennies, and late. The rent was due. She moved into a back room at a boarding house. 10 square feet, shared bathroom. Her framed diploma stayed under the bed. 6 months later, she saw the ad. Cleaning assistant position. Immediate start. She accepted. The sound of laughter jolted her back. Ethan slammed his hand on the table. Robert crossed his arms, that arrogant smirk plastered across his face. Eleanor opened her eyes. The luxurious conference room, the fallen mop, the parchment on the glass table. 7 years cleaning the floors of this building, invisible, silent, burying who she once was. But this document changed everything. Robert had no idea who he was talking to. She took a step toward the table. Eleanor walked to the table. Her old shoes squeaked in the silence. She reached for the parchment. Robert slapped his hand on the document first. "Oh, no. You haven't agreed to the terms yet." She stopped, her fingers inches from the paper. "I need to see the text up close." "You need to accept the wager first." He tilted his head. $100,000 if you translate it. Termination if you fail. Yes or no? The executives gathered around the table. Ethan crossed his arms. Sarah kept her phone recording. 2 others perched on the edge of their chairs. Eleanor looked at the document, seeing the symbols upside down, recognizing the structure. This wasn't just medieval Latin, it had Aramaic influence. 11th century clerical notation. "How much time do I have?" Robert laughed. "Time? You think this is a college exam? Ethan slammed his hand on the table. She doesn't even know where to begin, boss. 5 minutes, Eleanor said. Her voice came out firm. Give me 5 minutes with the document. 5 minutes? Robert leaned in. My expert asked for 3 weeks. He picked up the parchment, held it against the light. The letters became translucent. You have 30 seconds standing here in front of everyone. Eleanor felt her stomach clench. 30 seconds wasn't enough. She needed to examine the symbols, see the marginal notations, identify the specific dialect. This is unfair. Unfair? Robert threw his head back. A cleaner asking for fairness. How ironic. The executives chuckled. Ethan pulled out his phone, started recording too. Eleanor took a deep breath, stretched out her hand again. Then at least let me hold the document. Robert looked at her, at the parchment, back at her. Fine. He extended the paper. Eleanor held it by the edges. Her hands trembled. Not from fear, but from contained rage. She turned the document over. The light from the crystal chandelier illuminated the letters. Her eyes scanned the lines. First word, testamentum. Second, domini. The third had an Aramaic symbol interspersed. Time's up. Eleanor looked up. Not even 15 seconds have passed. Yes, it has. Robert snatched the parchment from her hands. And you didn't say anything because you didn't let me finish reading? Finish reading? Ethan guffawed. She can't even read, boss. Sarah zoomed in on Eleanor's face. 2 executives whispered. One made a throat-slitting gesture. Robert placed the document inside a leather folder, closing it with a metallic click. You know what your problem is? He walked in a circle around her. People like you always think they can do more than they're capable of. Eleanor spun, following his movement. Her fists clenched. People like me, low-class, uneducated? He stopped in front of her. You watch television and think you know things. Ethan stood up, approached Eleanor from behind. It's true. The other day I saw a cleaner trying to give her opinion on economics. Ridiculous, Sarah said, still filming. Robert tapped the leather folder. This document is worth more than you'd earn in 10 lifetimes. And you think you can just look at it and understand? He opened the folder again, took out the parchment, held it high. I'll make it easy. Just translate the first line. 1 line. I'll give you. Eleanor looked at the paper. She saw the words even from a distance. The first line read, Testamentum Dominoster de Sacris Reliquis Anno Mixii Dedicatum. She could translate it, could say word for word, but something held her back. What if I get the first line wrong? If you get it wrong, Robert lowered the paper. Then you don't just resign, you leave here without this month's pay. The executives made noises. Ethan clapped slowly. Sarah changed her camera angle. Eleanor felt sweat on the back of her neck. Her salary was $1,200. That's what she used to pay for her room at the boarding house. Her food, her blood pressure medication. That wasn't in the initial agreement. Agreement? Robert laughed. You think you're in a position to negotiate an agreement? Ethan moved closer. She felt his breath on her neck. Just accept it or go back to scrubbing floors. Eleanor closed her eyes. Her mind raced. She could translate that in her sleep. She was absolutely certain. But what if she failed? What if, after 7 years of hiding, she tried to prove who she was and failed. Doubt crept in like poison. What if her memory had failed? What if 7 years without practice had erased her knowledge? What if she translated it and Robert said it was wrong anyway? He controlled everything here. The document, the witnesses, the money. Are you going to stand there all day? Eleanor opened her eyes. Robert checked his wristwatch, a gold Rolex. I'm waiting. She looked at the parchment, looked at the executives, looked at Claire in the corner of the room who kept her head down. If she tried and failed, she would lose everything, her job, her salary, the only thing she still had. But if she didn't try, she would live the rest of her life wondering. Eleanor took a deep breath. Her hand stopped trembling. I accept. Robert smiled. That predatory smile. Excellent. Then translate it now. He held the parchment in front of her, so close she could smell the mold. The first line, out loud, in front of everyone. Ethan turned on his phone's flash. Sarah moved closer. The 5 executives formed a semicircle, all with phones pointed. Eleanor looked at the words. Her heart pounded. The first line was clear, but her mouth wouldn't open. What if she was wrong? Eleanor opened her mouth. No sound came out. Robert moved closer. The parchment almost touched her face. Are you waiting for divine inspiration? Ethan let out a loud laugh. The other executives joined in. Sarah kept her phone focused on Eleanor's face. Look at her face, boss. Has she given up already? Robert lowered the document, walked back to the head of the table, sat in the leather chair, crossed his legs. You know what I see when I look at you? He tilted his head. A woman in her mid-40s scrubbing floors, no family, no future. Eleanor clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. I bet you didn't even finish high school. I did, she said, her voice low. What? I didn't hear you. I finished high school. Robert clapped slowly 3 times. What an impressive achievement. Did anyone else here finish high school? Everyone raised their hands. Ethan whistled. An executive tossed a pen on the table. See? Even the intern has a college degree. Robert adjusted his tie. But you've cleaned bathrooms your whole life, I imagine. Eleanor's cheeks burned. She kept her eyes fixed on the marble floor. Her own reflection stared back at her. And that uniform? Ethan pointed. Looks like you picked it out of the trash. The executives laughed louder. One of them took a photo. The flash illuminated the room. Robert stood up, walked to the glass window. Denver sparkled 40 stories below. You know the difference between me and you? He turned. I pay $15,000 a month just for my HOA. You probably live in a shack. Eleanor looked up, met his gaze. For 3 seconds she held eye contact. It's not a shack, it's a boarding house. Ah, my apologies. Robert made an exaggerated bow. A boarding house, how sophisticated. Ethan and Sarah guffawed. 2 executives banged on the table. A third made a gesture of giving alms. How much do you pay? 300, 400? 500, Eleanor replied. $500. Robert walked back to her. I spend more than that on a bottle of wine. He picked up the parchment again, waved it in front of her. And you really thought you could translate this? Something worth millions? Eleanor took a deep breath. Her legs trembled. I can translate it. Silence fell like a stone. Robert stopped waving the paper. Ethan raised his eyebrows. Sarah zoomed in completely. You can translate it? Robert pronounced each word slowly. You can? Then why didn't you translate it? Eleanor swallowed hard, tried to find the right words. I need more time to. Time. Robert threw the parchment on the table. The paper slid to the edge. The universal excuse of the incompetent. He turned to the executives. Are you seeing this? She can translate it, she just needs time. He made air quotes with his fingers. Just like that guy who says he can play the piano, he just needs lessons first. The room exploded in laughter. Ethan slapped an executive on the shoulder. Sarah covered her mouth, but her shoulders shook. Eleanor felt something rise in her throat. Pure, burning rage. I'm not lying. No. Robert crossed his arms. Then prove it. He pushed the parchment toward her. The paper spun on the glass table. One word. Give me one correct word and I'll consider that you tried. Eleanor looked at the document. The first word, testamentum. Testament. She knew. She was absolutely certain. Testamentum. It means in English. Robert interrupted. Testament. Robert tilted his head, looked at Ethan. She guessed testament. He laughed. The most obvious word in any Latin text. Ethan opened Google on his phone. Even Google Translate gets that one right, boss. Exactly. Robert took the parchment back. You literally guessed the easiest word in the entire document. Eleanor shook her head. I didn't guess. I know Latin. Can I translate the rest? You know Latin. Robert spoke slowly, mockingly. Of course. Where did you learn? At the Cleaners Academy? The executives exploded again. One of them spat out coffee from laughing so hard. Sarah had to hold her phone with both hands because she was shaking. Or was it at YouTube University? Ethan added. Eleanor took a step back, then another. Her entire body trembled. I studied ancient languages. I was. You were what? Robert approached quickly. Stood inches away. A professor? A translator? She didn't answer. The words caught in her throat. That's what I thought. He went back to his chair. Just another cleaner with delusions of grandeur. Ethan put his phone away. Sarah stopped recording. The executives began to disperse. The fun was over. But you know what's worse? Robert opened a drawer, took out a white envelope. You actually believed you had a chance. He threw the envelope on the table. Your payment. You can take it, and you don't need to come back tomorrow. Eleanor looked at the envelope. Then at Robert. You're firing me? I'm setting you free. He smiled. So you can pursue those incredible opportunities your talent deserves. Ethan chuckled softly. Sarah shook her head with fake pity. The executives were already back at their laptops. Eleanor picked up the envelope. Her hands trembled so much she almost dropped it. What about the challenge? What challenge? Robert opened his laptop. You failed in the first second. You didn't translate anything. But I. You're dismissed. Claire appeared beside Eleanor, gently touched her arm. Come on, let's get your things. Eleanor didn't move, looked at the parchment on the table, those words she knew so well, that language she mastered more than her own native tongue. Are you still here? Robert looked up from his laptop. Security. Claire's walkie-talkie crackled. Eleanor finally turned, walked toward the door. Her legs barely supported her body. As she left, she heard Robert's voice, and that's why everyone stays in their place. The glass door closed behind her. The sound echoed down the empty corridor. No one had defended her. Eleanor pushed open the door to the women's restroom. The fluorescent light hummed. She locked the door, leaned her back against the cold tile. The crumpled white envelope was in her hand. $1,200, her last payment. She turned on the faucet, water ran. Eleanor splashed it on her face. Once, twice, 3 times. When she looked up, she saw her reflection in the mirror, graying hair pulled back in a messy bun, deep dark circles under her eyes, a faded blue uniform with the company name on the pocket, 45 years old looking 60, 7 years in that building, invisible. Eleanor opened the envelope, counted the bills, $200 were missing. Deduction for equipment breakage. She had never broken anything. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. A message from the boarding house. Rent overdue. Please settle by Friday. Today was Thursday. She put the envelope away, turned on the faucet again. The water was still running when there was a knock at the door. Eleanor, it's Claire. I'll be right out. Can I come in? Eleanor unlocked it. Claire entered with a plastic bag, her things from the locker. Inside was an old coat, an empty lunchbox, a worn-out book, advanced Latin grammar. The cover was falling off. Eleanor picked up the book, the yellowed pages, notes in the margins in her handwriting from 20 years ago. On the first page, a dedication, to my daughter, who always flew higher, with love, Dad. It wasn't her father who had written it, it was herself, a lie she told herself. Her father couldn't write, but he was the one who bought the book with the money he saved washing cars. You didn't deserve that, Claire said softly. Eleanor closed the book, pressed it against her chest. But it happened. He's like that with everyone, and no one does anything. Claire lowered her eyes. We need the job. Eleanor put the book back in the bag, picked up her coat. It was time to leave and never come back. But something held her back. She had seen the parchment, read the first 3 lines. This wasn't just medieval Latin, it had the structure of a clerical testament, 11th century legal language, mixed with liturgical Aramaic. She knew that style exactly. She had translated dozens of similar documents at the university for museums, for collectors, for international auctions. Robert was wrong, and she could prove it. Claire, is that document still in the room? It is. Robert left it on the table. Why? Eleanor opened the bag again, took out the book, flipped to chapter 12. There it was. Examples of medieval clerical notation, symbols she had seen on the parchment. Do you have access to that room? I have the master key. But what time does he leave? Eleanor, you were fired. If he catches you there. What time? Claire looked at her watch. He has dinner with investors at 8. Leaves here at 7:30. It was 6:15. Eleanor put the book away, closed the bag. I need to see that document again. Why? He won't let you. He offered $100,000 in front of witnesses. Eleanor grabbed Claire's arm. Did you film it? Sarah filmed it. And she still has the video. Claire thought for 3 seconds. She posts everything in the executives group chat. It must be there. Eleanor let go of her arm, walked to the sink, splashed water on her face again. When she looked in the mirror, this time she saw something different. Not a defeated cleaner, but a university professor who had been disrespected. "Can you get me into the room after he leaves?" "Eleanor, this is crazy." "Can you?" Claire held the doorknob. She was about to leave, then stopped. 20 years working here. He never remembered my birthday, not once. She turned around. "At 7:30, I'll text you. You go up. You have 10 minutes before the night cleaning crew arrives." Eleanor nodded. Claire left alone. Again, Eleanor opened the book to the marked page. Aramaic symbols interspersed with Latin. That was the key. If she could photograph the document, she could translate it word for word, and then she would return. Not as a cleaner, but as the expert Robert so desperately needed. Her phone vibrated. 7:28, message from Claire. He left. Come now. Eleanor put the book in her bag, left the restroom. The corridor was empty. Her legs no longer trembled. It was now or never. Eleanor ascended the service staircase. Her footsteps echoed on the concrete. She reached the 40th floor. The metal door creaked open. Claire waited in the corridor. She held a golden key. 10 minutes. No more than that. She unlocked the glass door. The conference room was dark, only the city lights streaming in through the windows. The crystal chandelier cast long shadows. Eleanor entered. She went straight to the table. The parchment wasn't there. Where's the document? Claire looked at the table. The leather folder was also gone. He must have taken it to the safe. Eleanor felt her stomach sink. Where's his safe? In his office. But I don't have the code. The seconds ticked by. Eleanor looked around. Drawers, cabinets, nothing. Wait. Claire ran to the chair where Robert had sat, looked under the table. He sometimes leaves things here when he's in a hurry. She reached in, pulled out the leather folder. Found it. Eleanor took the folder, opened it with trembling hands. The parchment was inside, intact. She placed it on the table, took her phone from her pocket. Hold the ends. Claire held the edges of the document. Eleanor photographed it. 1 photo, 2, 3, zooming in on each line, zooming in on the marginal symbols. Quick, the cleaning crew arrives in 5 minutes. Eleanor continued photographing, turned the document over. The back had 3 more lines in pure Aramaic. Done. She put the parchment back in the folder. Claire placed it back under the table. Now what are you going to do? Eleanor opened the photos, zoomed in on the first line, the words became clear. She knew every symbol, every structure. I'm going to translate it tonight, and then I'll come back. Claire grabbed her arm. Eleanor, he won't accept it, even if you translate it perfectly. He offered $100,000 in front of witnesses. Sarah recorded everything. And you think he cares? Claire lowered her voice. He already humiliated the manager who sued the company. Destroyed the career of a director who confronted him. Eleanor put her phone away. Then I need more than a translation. Need what? Proof he can't deny. The two left the room. Claire locked the door. They walked down the corridor in silence, reached the service elevator. That document, Eleanor said, he mentioned it's worth millions. Why? I don't know. He brought it from an auction in Europe last week. Eleanor pressed the ground floor button. The doors closed. If I prove I know exactly what this document is, if I translate not just the text, but explain its origin, its period, its historical value, she looked at Claire. He won't be able to deny it. How are you going to do that in one night? The elevator descended, passing the 30th floor, 20th, 10th. I still have my contacts, professors, researchers. Eleanor clutched her phone in her pocket. Someone will know about that auction? The doors opened on the ground floor. Eleanor stepped out. Claire held the door. Do you need help? I need you to get the video Sarah recorded. She won't just give it to me. Then copy it from her phone. Invent an excuse. Claire hesitated. 5 seconds. 10. All right. But promise me one thing. What? When you destroy his arrogance, let me watch. Eleanor smiled for the first time in hours. I promise. She left the building. Night had fallen over Denver. The cold air of the avenue hit her face. Eleanor walked to the bus stop. Inside the crowded bus, she opened the photos again. She zoomed in on the complete first line, Testamentum Dominoster de Sacris Reliquis Anno Mixii Dedicatum. Testament of our Lord concerning the sacred relics dedicated in the year 1213. The second line had the interspersed Aramaic symbol. Eleanor knew that. It was a notation used by Catholic scribes who translated texts from the Middle East. She opened WhatsApp, searched for an old contact. Professor Davies, State University of Colorado, last conversation 6 years ago. She typed, Professor, I need help with a document. It's urgent. 3 minutes later, he replied, Eleanor, you disappeared. I thought you'd left the field. I did, but I found something important. What kind of document? Eleanor sent the first photo, waited. The 3 dots appeared, vanished, reappeared. Where did you get this? Long story. Do you recognize it? If it's authentic, this is an 11th century clerical testament, possibly related to the Fourth Crusade. Eleanor typed quickly, how much is it worth? Depends on the provenance, but documents like this have sold for millions of euros at European auctions. London, possibly, or Paris, Rome, maybe. Eleanor sent the photo of the back with the Aramaic. And this? Professor Davies took longer to respond. 1 minute, 2. Eleanor, this is extremely rare clerical notation. Only 3 11th century scribes used this pattern. If authentic, it could be referring to specific relics from the Holy Land. Her heart quickened. Can you help me with the full translation? I can, but it will take time. These symbols require historical context, comparison with other manuscripts. What if I translate it tonight? Silence. Then, you still have the talent, Eleanor, but you'll need references, specialized dictionaries, concordances. I still have some books. Then send me the translation when you're done. I'll review it. Eleanor got off the bus, walked 3 blocks to the boarding house, climbed the creaking steps, entered her 10-square-foot room. From under the bed, she pulled out 3 cardboard boxes. Inside, 15 books, Latin grammars, Aramaic dictionaries, concordances of medieval texts. She opened her old laptop. The screen flickered 3 times before turning on. Eleanor connected to the boarding house's internet, opened a blank document. 8:45 p.m. She had until tomorrow morning. The first line was easy, 10 minutes. The second required consulting 2 dictionaries, 20 minutes. The third had a symbol she had never seen. She photographed it, sent it to Professor Davies. He replied in 5 minutes with the exact reference. Eleanor typed, paused, consulted, typed more. Midnight turned into 1 a.m., 1 into 3. By 4:15, she had 7 complete lines translated. 2 were left, but her eyes burned, her head felt heavy. She drank cold coffee. She continued. 5:30 a.m., the sun began to rise. Eleanor typed the last word. Dedicated an eternal testimony of the sacred relics brought from Jerusalem in the year of our Lord 1213. She reread it 3 times. Checked every word, every symbol, every reference. Perfect. She sent it to Professor Davies. Finished. Can you review it? 20 minutes later. Eleanor, this is impeccable. Academic publication level. You haven't lost a thing. She smiled. Tears fell unbidden. Her phone rang. Claire, I got the video. It's still in the group. I copied it. Send it to me. 3 seconds later, the file arrived. Eleanor opened it. Robert's voice echoed. I'll give you my entire salary this month, $100,000, if you translate 3 lines. She watched until the end. Every humiliation, every laugh, every cruel word. Then she saved it in 3 different places. Eleanor, what are you going to do now? She looked at the complete translation on the screen, looked at the video, looked at the scattered books. I'm going to schedule a meeting with Robert. He won't agree to see you. He will. When I tell him I have the complete translation of the document worth millions. Silence on the other end. You did it? I did. And now he'll have to listen to me. Eleanor opened her email, typed to Robert Tavares's corporate address. Subject, translation of the Testamentum Domini. Delivery tomorrow at 2 p.m. Email body, as agreed, the complete translation of the 1213 document is attached. I await payment of $100,000 as per the video recorded offer. She attached the translation. Attached a photo of the first translated line as a preview. Carbon copied Claire and Sarah. Her finger hovered over the send button. 1 click, message sent. Now it was time to wait for the reply and prepare for war. The reply arrived at 7 a.m. My office 2 p.m. Bring original document. Eleanor read it 3 times. No please, no acknowledgement, just an order. She replied, I will bring the complete translation, printed and referenced. The original document is with you. There was no response. Eleanor showered, put on the only business attire she still owned, black pants with a small patch on the hem, a slightly yellowed white blouse, black shoes that pinched her left foot. It wasn't what she would have worn for an academic presentation years ago, but it would have to do. She printed the translation at the corner print shop, $10 for 12 pages. Each page had the original Latin line, followed by the English translation, footnotes explaining Aramaic symbols, historical references for the period. At the end, she added a 2-page addendum, an analysis of authenticity and historical value. Everything was there, the document's probable origin, the scribe who possibly created it, its estimated value at international auctions, between 2 and 4 million euros. Eleanor placed everything in a clear folder, called Claire. Did he reply? He did. Meeting at 2. Can you notify the other executives? I already did. I told them it was an important presentation about the document. Ethan and Sarah confirmed their attendance. Perfect. Eleanor hung up, looked at the clock. 11:15 a.m. She had time. She opened WhatsApp, sent a message to Professor Davies. If I need a video call validation this afternoon, would you be available? I can. What time? Between 2 and 3. I'll be available. Call me. Eleanor put her phone away, picked up the folder, left the boarding house. The day was overcast, a fine rain falling. She didn't have an umbrella. She arrived at the building at 1:40 p.m., 17 minutes early. Claire was waiting in the lobby. He's nervous. He called a lawyer. Eleanor stopped. A lawyer? I think he's going to try to say the challenge wasn't serious, that it was a joke. Eleanor's stomach clenched. She had anticipated this. That's why she had carbon copied Claire and Sarah on the email. That's why she had the video. Did you bring a copy of the video? Claire nodded, holding up her phone. 3 copies, email, cloud, and flash drive. The two entered the elevator. Eleanor saw her reflection in the metallic mirror, deep dark circles, hair pulled back in a simple bun, but her eyes shone differently. 40th floor. 20th, 30th. What if he refuses to pay even with the translation? Claire asked. Then I'll show the video. And what if he says the video proves nothing? Then I'll call Professor Davies, he'll validate my translation live. And even then, Claire? Eleanor looked at her. I spent 7 years invisible. He's going to see me today. The elevator opened on the 40th floor. They stepped out. The corridor was empty, silent, only the hum of the air conditioning. Claire stopped in front of Robert's office door. He said for you to wait in the conference room. He'll come down in 5 minutes with the lawyer. Probably. Eleanor entered the conference room, the same one where she had been humiliated yesterday. The gleaming glass table, the crystal chandelier, the view of Denver below. She placed the folder on the table, took out the translation, arranged the pages side by side, line by line, translation by translation. Ethan entered first, stopped at the door when he saw Eleanor. What's she doing here? Meeting scheduled, Eleanor replied without looking up. Sarah entered right after, recognized Eleanor, immediately grabbed her phone. This is going to be good, she murmured. 2 executives entered, sat far from the head of the table. Claire stood in the corner, as always. 2:03 p.m. Robert entered. A man in a gray suit walked beside him. Leather briefcase, eyeglasses, the lawyer. Robert stopped short when he saw Eleanor at the head of the table. His nostrils flared. Who said you could sit there? Eleanor didn't stand. You scheduled a meeting to receive the translation. Here it is. She pushed the pages toward him. Robert didn't take them. He looked at the lawyer. The man approached the table, examined the first page. This is the complete translation, with notes, historical references, and an authenticity analysis. The lawyer flipped through 3 pages, 4, stopping at the 6th. She identified the scribe by the notation pattern, he murmured. Robert snatched the pages from his hand, read in silence. His eyes darted quickly, his jaw clenched. A vein pulsed in his temple. Ethan moved closer. Sarah filmed. The executives leaned in. Robert threw the pages on the table. This proves nothing. Eleanor took a deep breath. It had begun. Robert pushed the pages to the side of the table. Anyone can invent a translation, throw it into Google Translate, and pretend they know. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. Mr. Tavares, the translation appears to have technical rigor. Appears. Robert slammed his hand on the table. But how do I know it's correct? Eleanor kept her hands in her lap. They no longer trembled. You can verify it with any expert. Expert? Robert laughed. I hired the best translator in Denver. He said this document was impossible to translate without laboratory analysis. Ethan crossed his arms. How much time did he ask for, boss? 3 weeks. And she shows up with this in 12 hours. Robert pointed at the pages. It's obviously a fraud. Sarah stopped filming for 2 seconds, looked at Eleanor, then resumed recording. The lawyer picked up one of the pages, read aloud, Testament of our Lord concerning the sacred relics, dedicated in the year 1213. Is that the first line? It is, Eleanor replied. Robert scoffed. Testament, the most obvious word in the entire document, a lucky guess. And the rest? The lawyer flipped through. She translated 9 lines, identified Aramaic symbols, dated the scribe. Any historian can do that. Any historian would take weeks, sir. Robert snatched the pages from the lawyer's hand. He read again. His ears turned red. He threw everything on the table with force. 2 sheets flew. This is worthless. She hasn't proven the translation is correct. Eleanor opened the clear folder, took out a second stack of papers. So, you want verification? That I was a real expert, not a cleaner, pretending I was a linguistics professor. Eleanor's voice cut through the air. State University, 20 years of a career, specialization in ancient languages. Silence fell like a guillotine. Ethan dropped his pen. Sarah zoomed in. The 2 executives exchanged glances. Claire smiled in the corner. Robert blinked 3 times. You what? A professor. Eleanor stood up. A doctoral candidate, a certified translator. I published 17 academic articles on medieval manuscripts. She spread the second stack on the table, copies of diplomas, certificates, published articles, a photo of her receiving an award at an international congress. And you never asked, never looked at me, you only saw a cleaner. Robert picked up a diploma, read it. His hands trembled slightly. Why were you cleaning floors? Because I needed to eat. And no one hires a 40-year-old indebted professor. The lawyer approached the table, examined the documents, looked at Eleanor, then back at Robert. Mr. Tavares, she has credentials. The translation might be correct. Might. Robert threw down the diploma, but I need absolute certainty. Eleanor took out her phone, then I'll call someone who can certify it. She dialed, put it on speakerphone. 3 rings. A male voice answered. Eleanor. Professor Davies, are you available? I am. Go ahead. Robert leaned in. Who is this? Professor Arthur Davies, head of the Ancient Languages Department at the State University of Colorado, 50 years of experience, consultant to the National Library of Denver. The voice on the phone continued. Eleanor sent me photos of the document yesterday. I reviewed her translation overnight. Ethan moved closer to the phone. So, is it correct? Impeccable, international journal publication level. She correctly identified the period, the scribe, even the probable origin of the parchment. Sarah filmed the phone. The lawyer jotted something down. Robert remained motionless. Professor, Eleanor said, can you explain the value of this document? If it's authentic, and from the translation it appears to be, we're talking about a clerical testament related to the Fourth Crusade. Documents like this have sold for up to 4 million euros at European auctions. Ethan let out a low whistle. The executives whispered. Claire covered her mouth. 4 million. Robert finally spoke. Euros. About $25 million at the current exchange rate. Silence returned. Heavier this time. Eleanor continued. Professor, can you confirm my background? Eleanor Miller was one of the best students I ever had. She defended her master's with honors, started her doctorate with a full scholarship, published in international journals. She simply disappeared 7 years ago. I didn't disappear, Eleanor said softly. I just needed to survive. Robert looked at the lawyer. The man shook his head slightly, no way out. Professor Davies. Robert approached the phone. This is Robert Tavares, CEO of the company. How can I be absolutely certain this translation is perfect? Simple. Take the original document, read the first line. Eleanor will translate it on the spot. I'll confirm over the phone if it's correct. Robert hesitated, looked at Eleanor, at the lawyer, at the executives watching everything. All right. He opened a drawer, took out the leather folder, removed the parchment, placed it on the table. First line. Eleanor didn't need to get closer. She had already memorized it. Testamentum Dominoster de Sacris Reliquis Anno Mixii Dedicatum. Translation: Testament of our Lord concerning the sacred relics dedicated in the year 1213. The voice on the phone responded immediately, correct, perfect, every word. Robert narrowed his eyes. Second line, Eleanor read the Latin, translated it. The professor confirmed, third? She repeated perfect again. Fourth. Here's the Aramaic symbol. Eleanor read. Paused at the symbol. This symbol represents eternal testimony. It's specific notation used by scribes who translated texts from the Holy Land. Only 3 11th century scribes used this pattern. The professor chuckled on the other end. She memorized my 1998 article. I wrote exactly that. Ethan dropped his phone on the table. Sarah stopped filming, started to applaud slowly. An executive joined in, then another. Claire clapped harder. The sound echoed in the room. Robert stood still. The parchment in his hands, the translation pages scattered, the professor's voice still on speakerphone. Mr. Tavares, the lawyer said softly. She fulfilled the challenge in front of witnesses, with independent verification. Robert placed the parchment on the table slowly. His hands now visibly trembled. How much did I offer? No one answered. Eleanor took her phone from her pocket, opened the video Claire had sent, pressed play. Robert's voice filled the room. I'll give you my entire salary this month, $100,000, if you translate 3 lines. Eleanor paused the video. $100,000 you offered yesterday, at 6 p.m., in this very room. The lawyer closed his briefcase. Mr. Tavares, technically she is entitled. I know. Robert exploded, slammed his hand on the table, the leather folder jumped. He took a deep breath once, twice, 3 times. Everyone waited. Sarah was the first to speak. I filmed everything yesterday. I have the full video on my phone. She opened her gallery, showed the screen to the lawyer. He watched for 15 seconds, nodded. Ethan stood up from his chair, walked to Eleanor. I laughed. He lowered his eyes. I'm sorry. Eleanor didn't respond, just looked. The 2 executives who had remained silent approached the table. One of them picked up the translation, read 3 pages, looked at the other. This is professional work, truly. The second executive turned to Robert. Boss, if she could translate this in 12 hours, imagine what else she can do. Claire emerged from the corner for the first time in 20 years. She walked to the head of the table, stood beside Eleanor. "I knew it," she said. "I always knew there was something different about her." Robert remained motionless, looking at the parchment. The entire room had turned against him. The lawyer put his pen back in his briefcase. "Mr. Tavares, my professional recommendation is clear. Fulfill the agreement now, before this turns into a labor lawsuit." "Lawsuit?" Robert finally looked up. "Because of $100,000? Because of workplace humiliation. Multiple witnesses, recorded video, formal offer not fulfilled." The lawyer closed his briefcase. "She could ask for much more than $100,000 if this goes to court." Ethan looked at Sarah. She still held her phone, the video paused on the screen. "We posted it in the company group chat," Ethan murmured. "About 50 people have already seen it." Robert turned white. "You did what?" "I thought it was funny. I sent it to the group." Ethan showed his phone. "It has 120 views." Robert's jaw clenched. His hands formed fists on the table. One of the executives coughed. "Boss, if this leaks outside the company, the press will love it. Millionaire CEO humiliates cleaner, who was a university professor. Viral in 3 hours." Sarah added. Silence crushed the room. Eleanor remained standing, calm, waiting. Claire picked up the parchment, examined it closely. $25 million dollars, and you offered $100,000 as if it were a joke. Robert snatched the parchment from her hand. "Enough." He opened a drawer, took out a checkbook. His hands trembled. The pen almost fell twice. Everyone watched in silence. The sound of the pen scratching the paper echoed. Robert tore out the check, placed it on the table, and pushed it toward Eleanor. $100,000 as promised. Eleanor took the check, read it, verified the signature, folded it, put it in her pocket. "Thank you." Her voice was firm, without emotion, without celebration. Robert expected something more. A laugh, a provocation, a victory speech. But Eleanor just stood there, looking him in the eyes, and that was worse than any words. Robert stood up, tried to regain his composure. "All right, you got your money. Now you can go." Eleanor didn't move. "I'm not finished yet." "What do you mean?" She picked up the last page of the translation, the authenticity analysis. "Do you know how much you paid for this document?" Robert crossed his arms. "That's none of your business." 2 million euros at the London auction. Last week. Eleanor placed the page in front of him. "I called the auction house this morning. Confirmed it." The lawyer approached. "How did you?" "Because I know 3 European curators, and they owe me favors from when I was still publishing." Eleanor pointed to a specific paragraph. "You were scammed. This document isn't worth $25 million, it's worth at most 800,000 euros. Robert snatched the page. "You're lying." "I'm not. The parchment is authentic, the translation is correct, but the testament is incomplete. The second part is missing, the one that lists the specific relics." She paused. "Without the second part, the value plummets." Ethan looked at Robert. "Boss, you bought it without verifying?" "I trusted the expert who said it was impossible to translate." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "He never translated it because he didn't want you to find out." Robert's face turned red, then purple. "Are you saying I lost over €1 million? I'm saying you paid 3 times more than it's worth." The lawyer picked up the analysis, read in silence. His expression changed. She's right. Incomplete documents are common at auctions. Inexperienced buyers pay fortunes. Robert gripped the edge of the table. His knuckles turned white. Inexperienced, without proper consultation. The lawyer corrected. If you had hired someone qualified beforehand. He looked at Eleanor. The silence completed the sentence. Ethan took 2 steps back. Sarah stopped filming. The executives looked at the floor. Robert was breathing heavily. His chest rose and fell rapidly. Get out of here. Eleanor didn't move. I said get out of here. His voice echoed through the glass walls. Claire flinched. Sarah dropped her phone. The lawyer took a step back, but Eleanor remained firm. Eyes locked with his. I'm leaving, but first, a proposal. I don't want to hear anything from you. You need someone who understands ancient manuscripts, who knows how to identify forgeries, who translates rare documents. Robert laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. And you think I'd hire you after this? I'm not asking for a job. Eleanor took a business card from her pocket, placed it on the table. I'm offering consulting, $300 an hour, when you need it. She turned her back, walked toward the door. Claire opened the way. Ethan too. At the door, Eleanor stopped, looked back one last time. And, Mr. Tavares, the next time you see a cleaner, a doorman, a security guard, remember that you know nothing about them. Nothing about who they were or who they still can be. She left. The glass door closed slowly. The sound echoed. Robert stood still, alone at the head of the table, the incomplete parchment in front of him, the check already cashed, 120 people having seen the humiliation video. The lawyer picked up his briefcase. I'll send the invoice for my services. He left. Then Sarah, then Ethan, the 2 executives, one by one. Claire was the last. At the door, she turned. Oh, Mr. Tavares, I'm also resigning. 20 years was long enough. The room became empty. Robert sat down, looked at the business card Eleanor had left. Eleanor Miller, translator and consultant in ancient manuscripts. He crumpled the card, threw it in the trash, then thought better of it, picked it back up, smoothed it out, put it in his wallet. Outside, Eleanor pressed the elevator button, the $100,000 check in her pocket. Claire stood beside her, her phone ringing with messages from 3 museums wanting to hire services. The elevator doors opened. She stepped in, saw her reflection in the metallic mirror. She was no longer an invisible cleaner, she was who she had always been. Eleanor exited the building, the sunlight hitting her face. She stopped on the sidewalk, took a deep breath. Once, twice, 3 times. Claire emerged right behind her. She carried a box with her own belongings. I can't believe I did that. Eleanor looked at her. Do you regret it? Not one bit. Claire laughed. A light, liberating laugh. 20 years putting up with that man. I should have left a long time ago. The 2 walked down the avenue. The noise of traffic, honking, people rushing everywhere. Eleanor took the check from her pocket. $100,000. She had dreamed of that amount for 7 years. Imagined everything she would do. Now that it was there, it felt surreal. What are you going to do with the money? Claire asked. Pay off the old debts first, then? Eleanor folded the check. Then I'll see. They stopped at a coffee shop on the corner. Sat at an outdoor table. Eleanor ordered a cappuccino, Claire ordered a juice. 3 museums messaged me, Eleanor said, looking at her phone. They want quotes for translations? Are you going to accept? I am, but now at a fair price. The cappuccino arrived. Eleanor took a sip. The coffee was hot, sweet, perfect. Claire stirred her juice with a straw. You know what struck me most when you said he knew nothing about people? It's true. We pass by others every day and don't see them. I did that too, Claire admitted. I saw you cleaning. Never asked your full name. Where you came from? What you did before. Eleanor held the cup with both hands. Steam rose. No one asked, it was easier to be invisible. And now? Eleanor smiled. For the first time, a genuine smile. Now I exist again. Claire's phone rang. She looked at the screen. Her eyes widened. It's from HR at the company. They want to know if I'll reconsider my resignation? Are you going to reconsider? Claire locked her phone, put it in her bag. No, I've decided. I'm going to look for something better. The two finished their drinks in silence, a comfortable silence. Then they stood up, hugged on the sidewalk. Thank you, Eleanor said. For what? For standing by me when no one else did. Claire squeezed the hug. Thank you for showing me that you can fight back. They parted ways. Each went in a different direction. Eleanor walked to the bank, deposited the check, watched her balance increase, numbers she hadn't seen in years. She left the bank, her phone rang. Professor Davies, Eleanor, there's a manuscript restoration project at the National Library. They pay well. Want me to recommend you? She smiled. I do. 5 days later, Robert Tavares sat alone in his office, the table empty. No executive had come to request a meeting that morning. His phone rang. It was the owner of the London auction house. They wanted the document back. They had discovered that the second part of the testament was at another auction. They offered to repurchase it for half the price. Robert hung up without responding. The video had leaked. Not just within the company. Someone had posted it on social media. 60,000 views in 3 days. Comments tearing him apart. Arrogant CEO humiliated by cleaner. Karma exists. He deserved it. Ethan resigned. Sarah too. 2 directors left for competing companies. HR reported difficulty hiring new employees. No one wanted to work with him. Eleanor, meanwhile, arrived for the first time at the National Library of Denver as a contracted consultant, no longer through service entrances, but through the main entrance. She wore new dress pants. An impeccable white blouse, comfortable shoes that didn't pinch, carrying a leather briefcase with her materials. Inside, dictionaries, magnifying lenses, a notebook. Professor Miller. A man with a gray beard extended his hand. I'm the curator of the manuscript section, Professor. She hadn't heard that title in 7 years. Pleasure. He led her to a climate-controlled room. On the table, 3 15th-century parchments. They needed urgent translation for an international exhibition. Eleanor put on white gloves, picked up the magnifying lens, leaned over the first document. The letters were familiar, the structure known, the symbols clear. She began to read aloud, translating line by line. The curator noted everything. 2 assistants recorded. Impressive, the curator said after an hour. You read as if it were your native tongue. It is, in a way, Eleanor replied. The work took 4 hours. When she finished, she had 3 documents completely translated. Historical analysis of each, conservation recommendations. The curator signed the check. $15,000, as per the quote. Eleanor took the check. $15,000 for 4 hours of work, more than a year's salary as a cleaner. Do you have other projects? She asked. Several. And now that we've seen your work, you'll be our first choice. Eleanor left the National Library of Denver at 6 p.m. The sun was setting. She walked to a restaurant, not a cheap self-service place, a real restaurant, with tablecloths and a printed menu. She ordered a dish that cost $40. She ate slowly, savoring it without rush. Her phone vibrated. A message from Professor Davies. State University of Colorado wants you as a visiting professor. Next semester. Interested? She typed very. 2 weeks later, Eleanor returned to the building where she had worked. Not to clean, but to retrieve documents she had left at HR. She entered through the lobby. The security guard recognized her. Ms. Miller, I barely recognized you. You look different. I am. While waiting for the elevator, she saw a familiar scene. A man in a suit was yelling at a cleaning employee. The woman had her eyes downcast, holding a trembling mop. Are you stupid? I asked you to clean before 9. I'm sorry, sir, I don't want excuses. I want you to do the job right. People in the lobby watched, no one did anything. Eleanor walked up to the man, stood beside the employee. Excuse me, the man turned, looked Eleanor up and down. Who are you? Someone who knows the cleaning routine of this building. Eleanor looked him in the eyes. And I know that this floor can only be cleaned after 9, administration rule, because of the morning meetings. The man scowled. So what? So what is that you're demanding something impossible and humiliating someone who is just following the rules? The employee looked up, surprised, hopeful. The man took a step toward Eleanor. That's none of your business. Yes, it is, because I've been in her shoes. Eleanor didn't back down. And I know exactly what it's like to hear people like you. The security guard approached. 3 people stopped to watch. Are you going to leave, or should I call security? The man threatened. Eleanor took out a business card, offered it to the employee. If he continues, call me. I know labor rights and lawyers who love cases like this. The employee took the card with trembling hands. She read it. Her eyes filled with tears. Thank you, she whispered. Eleanor nodded, looked at the man one last time. Respect costs nothing, but the lack of it can cost a lot. She entered the elevator, the doors closed. The last thing she saw was the employee holding the card as if it were gold. In the elevator mirror, Eleanor saw her reflection. She was no longer the invisible woman of weeks ago. She was someone who had a voice, who used that voice, who defended those who couldn't defend themselves. She had returned, not to the place she was before, but to a better place. The doors opened on the 10th floor. Eleanor exited, retrieved her documents, signed the final termination agreement. When she left the building, the sun shone brightly. She put on her sunglasses, walked down the avenue. Her phone rang. Another project, another museum, another chance. Eleanor answered, smiling. Life had begun again. Eleanor's life, once a gray routine of scrubbing floors and avoiding gazes, now pulsed with renewed energy. The $100,000 check was the first step. She paid off her father's lingering hospital debts, which had haunted her for years, and settled the overdue rent at the boarding house. The feeling of freedom was intoxicating, like the fresh air she breathed upon leaving the National Library of Denver. With the remaining money, Eleanor invested in herself. She bought new clothes, elegant yet understated, reflecting her new professional phase. Comfortable shoes, a good haircut, and glasses that enhanced her intelligent gaze. Small changes that, together, transformed her external image to match the strength she had rediscovered internally. She was no longer the invisible cleaner, but Dr. Eleanor Miller, ancient languages specialist. Her work at the National Library of Denver expanded rapidly. The curator, Dr. Peterson, was impressed not only by her erudition but by her passion and dedication. Eleanor immersed herself in projects of cataloging and restoring rare manuscripts, some of which had been untouched for decades. She discovered a fragment of a Byzantine text that rewrote part of the history of an ancient dynasty, and her discovery generated a buzz in the international academic community. Articles about her new translations began to be published in specialized journals, and her name, which had been forgotten, resurfaced with force. The offer from the State University of Colorado to be a visiting professor the following semester was the icing on the cake. Returning to academia, to the place where she had flourished, was a dream that had seemed unattainable. She accepted with enthusiasm, planning an innovative course on Aramaic influence in medieval Latin texts, something few professors in the world could offer with her depth of knowledge. The classroom, once a stage for her humiliation, would now be a space for her intellectual triumph. Claire, in turn, also found her path. Inspired by Eleanor's courage, she refused Robert's HR offer and secured a job at an event management company, where her talent for organization and her empathy with people were valued. They kept in touch, exchanging messages and meeting for coffee, celebrating their small and large victories. Their friendship, forged in adversity, became a pillar of mutual support. Robert Tavares, however, faced a downward spiral. The video of his humiliation went uncontrollably viral. The press, always eager for scandals, turned the story into a case study on corporate arrogance and the invisibility of workers. His reputation was tarnished, the company's image plummeted, and investors began to withdraw their support. The London auction house, furious with the discovery of the parchment's incompleteness and the bad faith in the transaction, demanded not only a repurchase but substantial compensation, threatening an international lawsuit. The expert he had hired, fearing exposure as an accomplice in the fraud, disappeared, leaving Robert in an even more precarious situation. Robert's office, once a sanctuary of power, was now an echo of his failure. The empty chairs, the silent phone, the incomplete parchment on the table, a constant reminder of his arrogance and the price he paid for it. He tried to reverse the situation, but each attempt only made things worse. The media hounded him, employees avoided him, and the company's board of directors began to question his leadership. His fall was as public and humiliating as his ascent had been. Eleanor, on the other hand, was in full ascent. Her first day as a visiting professor at the State University of Colorado was a resounding success. The classroom was packed, not only with students but with curious professors and researchers eager to see the legend who had returned. She spoke with a clarity and passion that captivated everyone, unraveling the mysteries of ancient manuscripts with impressive ease. At the end of the class, the applause was warm and sincere. On a sunny afternoon, Eleanor walked across the State University of Colorado campus, a tranquil smile on her face. She received a call from Dr. Peterson of the National Library of Denver. A new project had emerged, the translation of a collection of newly acquired medieval letters, which could reveal secrets about the founding of one of America's oldest cities. The project was ambitious, would require months of dedication, and offered remuneration that far exceeded anything she had imagined. Eleanor accepted without hesitation. Meanwhile, Robert Tavares received the final news. The board of directors voted for his removal. He was forced to resign, losing not only his CEO position but a large part of his personal fortune to cover the company's losses and indemnities. The image of the man who once laughed in Eleanor's face was now that of a bankrupt and demoralized businessman. Eleanor, in her new life, held no grudge. Vengeance was not her goal, but justice and the rediscovery of her own worth. She had proven that true wealth was not in money or power, but in knowledge, dignity, and the ability to rise again. Her story became an inspiring whisper in the corridors of the University and the National Library of Denver, a reminder that invisibility can be armor, and humiliation, the catalyst for an extraordinary transformation. She was not just a survivor, she was a phoenix, reborn from the ashes of her own history, stronger, wiser, and brighter than ever. And, by defending that cleaning employee in the building's lobby, she was not just defending a stranger, but herself, the Eleanor of 7 years ago, showing that the voice that was silenced now echoed with power and purpose. Life, for Eleanor, had begun again, and this time, she was in control of her own narrative.